Welcome everyone to another episode of Pod Before the Dentist. This is Dr. Lou, the I math guy from the neighborhood, your friendly neighborhood mathematics guru. I love you guys so much. This is going to be our last episode of season number 2. Can you believe it? We have come through season number 2 through thick and thin. I have some exciting things planned for next season, season 3. We'll probably kick that up in about 2 months. We're going to take a little break. I have some things to finish. I'm excited actually about the things I'm about to finish. I'm currently working with Dr. Shelley, Dr. Yolanda. We're working on a book, and our book is about helping people create mathematics tasks and authentic experiences, and we're excited about that. But we need some time to do it, and so we're going to end season 2. In the break time, we're going to go and finish off our book. I'm so excited about that. A few other things on the docket as well. But you know, this show has been a love movement for us since we kicked it off last year, and we're excited. We've had a slew of guests. This is I think it's our 37th or 38th episode, so we're really excited. We're going to keep it coming. Today I have with me an exciting person, an exciting millennial, a Black wealth champion, as she calls herself. I have Terri K. Terri Too Cool, as you might know her podcast. I've listened to this podcast. It's exciting. She will become your favorite millennial podcaster as a Black woman in tech, in STEM, a digital content creator. I first met this particular guest about 10 years ago. One of my very first social media friends, particularly on Twitter. I was under the name Black Scholar, the INI. But since then, she's gone on. She's a well-known radio personality, both online for theflavorradio.com in Atlanta, Georgia, as well as Hot 107.5 in my home country of Bermuda. Her opportunities she's had has given her experience and that she's needed to start her own very podcast on financial literacy called The Sovereign Life. The Sovereign Life with Terri Too Cool. That's TERRI 2 KOOL. So whether online or person, this is a person who's very passionate about influencing this generation, about how to actively build wealth and pass on generation to those who are coming behind us. I would like to introduce to you, audience, Miss Terri K Stewart. Welcome, Terri.
Greetings. Yes, it is INI, Terri Too Cool.
Terri, you have the best come up line in your podcast. The INI, Terri Too Cool. Listen, you've been a pioneer since I've met you. Such a pleasure to have you. You are so passionate about financial literacy, and you talk about becoming financially lit. Mm-hmm. And I listened to a couple of your podcasts, maybe a couple of months ago, actually, and you were talking about ways in which to get out of debt, ways in which to fix your financial breakdowns. And you talk so personally about your financial mistakes. I think your last podcast was the 3 financial mistakes you made in 2021, in 2020 or 2021. I can't remember which one it was, but I found it so fascinating that you talk about financial literacy. One thing you talk about in particular is this idea of wealth. Why is that so important, Terri K? Why is it so important for us to generate wealth and so that's a legacy for our people?
It's because it makes the next generation's life a little bit easier, right? When you come from a place of poverty, when you feel like you're struggling, that cycle is a cycle of trauma. It's a cycle of, I'm never going to be able to do what I see other people that look like me doing. And it unfortunately keeps us in this space of we're not worthy, we don't deserve. And it's the narrative that we've heard for centuries, right? And so I think one of the main reasons why I'm so passionate about us building wealth, and even if you're the first generation to do that for your family, it's because it has to start somewhere. Someone has to kind of break that cycle. Someone has to be willing to do that hard work. And it takes a lot of work. It's not easy to be the first generation in your family to kind of say, enough is enough. I want my children to have something that they can build on. And then I want their children to have something that they can build on. So I think this concept of wealth, we've seen it in other ethnicities and other races, and it's not something that's unattainable for us. It's just we have to be willing to do that work.
Yeah, no, Terry, you're so right. You're so right. Um, you know, just this idea of wealth, building wealth, and so last week we talked about. So this is weird because we talk about this on a show about mathematics, but
Mm-hmm.
last week we talked about mathematical mindsets, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of what's being taught in schools today about mathematical mindsets doesn't really teach you about wealth building, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's so important for our community. So last week, I'm sorry, on our show, we admitted, look, a key mathematical mindset that every child, every adult should be in is building wealth for one's community as both a legacy and as a means to work in and with around their community currently, right now, to be impactful. And that's been a hard shift for me. One of the nicknames for this show, this particular series that we're doing around wealth building and math mindsets is, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm so good at math, why am I broke? You
Mm-hmm.
know, when I look at your profile, you're a graduate of Spelman,
Mm.
and my old university I used to teach at, Georgia State University. You've come a long way, and you've lived both in the United States, Atlanta, and now living in Bermuda. Bermuda is probably, for my listening audience, one of the most. Our city of Hamilton is probably listed in, depending on what polls you look at, one of the most expensive cities per capita in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So you've
Mm-hmm.
had to think about financial literacy in the context of living in a country that's very very wealthy per se, or per capita, but very expensive as well. How do you navigate that? What have you found to be some of the similarities, differences, challenges?
I think main similarity is that you have to do the work. I think that a lot of people kind of remove themselves from it. I was someone who was really great at math. I was in like an advanced math class in middle and high school. And so I went like did trigonometry. Like I've done some really interesting math
Who did
in
you go
my
to high
heyday.
school?
So that was at Barclay Institute here in
Woo!
Bermuda. And then,
Okay.
yes, I was on Gold House for any Bermudians that are watching that
That's
also
right.
went to
Now that's
Barclay.
good people. I knew you was good people. Gold House. I knew you were good people.
Nico, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, I definitely was someone who did really well at math, but I struggled with getting my finances together. And I think one of the main things is because it wasn't something that was taught to me outside of school in like my family home. And so one of the similarities I found between Atlanta and Bermuda with like the whole financial literacy space was that it's not common out there either to talk about wealth, to kind of talk about these different strategies. One of the other things that I found to be similar is this concept of needing to budget, needing to know where my money was going. Regardless of how much I made, I still needed to know what I was spending my money on. The major difference is the cost of living. You cannot escape it if you live in Bermuda. The cost of living is very high because we import pretty much everything that we have to eat, use, and do anything on this island. So that has definitely been the biggest difference, was just the cost of living. However, the income in certain industries is on par and will allow you to be able to sustain a lifestyle on the island of Bermuda. There are some jobs here that do kind of suffer the same way in America. They don't have living wages, or they're not able to kind of get to a place where they feel like they can live affordably on the island. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
been also, I guess, a similarity that I found. It's unfortunate, and I do hope that the governments all around the world where they have those situations will actually make a real effort, because it's no one should have to feel that their idea of wealth is so far gone because the job that they have isn't a C-suite or it's not in a specific industry. Everyone should feel like they can build some version of wealth no matter what career they choose.
That's interesting is that the idea you're talking about wealth, it's not simply a financial position. It's a idea we have in our heads about being able to do more stuff, right? Being
Mm-hmm.
free and unencumbered. And sometimes you can get locked into your current job position. I mean, you can, I've met people from all walks of life who are locked into this role of living paycheck to paycheck. Just
Mm-hmm.
and what that means for me, and I think it means in the context of this show, is living so far away from the idea of wealth, right? The idea of being able to be unencumbered to do the things one wishes to do, to be impactful for in the now and in the future, and in future generations. What do you think? What do you say are the three biggest mistakes people make or limiting factors people make that keep them from uh, becoming wealthy or developing a wealth mindset or living paycheck to paycheck?
The top one, the very first one, it actually is the thought process. It's the words that we're saying, the things that the conversations that we're having within our family structures, within our communities, our friends. We talk so negatively. Money is tight. I don't want to pay this bill. Why is the Belco bill so high? Belco is the electricity company here in Bermuda, for those of you that don't know. So when I lived in Atlanta, why is Georgia Power charging me again? I just paid this bill last month, right? Those conversations, that self-talk that we have with ourselves and with others, that perpetuates this idea of us never being able to attain wealth. That's definitely the biggest one. It's our thought process. What are we thinking? Do we have that wealth mindset? The second is that we're not tracking our spending. We don't know where our money is going, but we know it's going somewhere every single month. And so unfortunately, when you don't know where your money is going, you don't know where you need to cut back depending on what your goal is. You don't know where you need to make shifts if you are working to pay down debt. You don't know if you're putting too much money towards eating out versus buying your own groceries so that you can make meals for yourself. You don't know if you're spending exorbitant amounts of money to get your hair done, to get your nails done, then you can maybe cut that back in the meantime so that you can pay down a debt. Because the idea of having a wealthy lifestyle is what Lou just mentioned, is that concept of freedom, is having the ability to make a decision without feeling like I have to choose between two things that I feel are essential in my life. And then I think the third thing is that a lot of us aren't using credit in a good way. And this is credit for like credit cards and things like personal loans. Like a lot of us are getting credit in order to like extend our income or to extend our paycheck because we feel like the paycheck is not enough for us to live currently in our life. And so we're getting credit cards so that we can max those out. And then unfortunately, because the way our paycheck is set up, we don't have any room to put towards paying down a credit card. So definitely those, I think, would be the three things that are keeping us from building wealth, because we're not using our minds proper in the right context and the right content. We are not tracking our spending, and we're just trying to get more money in order to sustain our life. And we really don't need more money. We just need to manage what we have better.
I'd like to continue along that vein, because I actually want to go back one to point number two, tracking your expenses. That seemed to come up quite a bit. I listened to a few of your podcasts. One podcast that I found quite funny. Your titles are really, really funny as well. One was prayer alone isn't going to make you wealthy.
It's no.
You're not going to pray your way to wealth.
You can't.
But one thing that keeps coming up in your podcast is this idea of tracking expenses. How hard is that? See, in my thinking of tracking my expenses, it was like when I joined. I've told my audience that I've been a part of a weight program, a new program. I've been trying to get in shape, get fit, and I've lost about 15 pounds since December, right? 30 pounds, and it's been kept off. It's been pretty cool. But one of the hardest things for me to do was to buy a scale and weigh myself every day, because I just didn't want to see the scale. Like, I just didn't want to see the scale. And I had this phobia. And it's the same way I've felt about my bank account, right? Not looking at my bank account, just kind of going on a wing and a prayer. And sometimes being at a store, on fumes a few days before payday, and you're just expecting it to like carry through. So how hard is that? And how do you get people to get into that mindset? Do I wait till I simplify stuff to get into a tracking program? What's your thoughts on that?
So I'll share my personal story. When I was about 24, 25, that was like my catalyst. That was when I said, all right, enough is enough, because I would basically play Russian roulette with my debit card. I would just be like, we're going to see if this goes through. And if it goes through, thank y'all. But if it don't, I guess it don't work. And so that, to me, even though my friends didn't know my financial situation, I felt embarrassed personally, because I was like, I shouldn't, like, I'm so good at math. I should not be thinking if I give them my debit card, it's not going to work. And so for me, it was this idea of, I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to go out and have to get on my online banking and like do a quick transfer to cover this expense. And so that was the first thing. So there is going to be something that's going to like push you that says, all right, you're going to have to just check yourself. You're going to have to say, do you want to keep going in this way? Because if you do, then you're not going to achieve wealth, one, and that's low-key just embarrassing. And then what I found is the first time that you do it, it's really heavy. Because if you've never tracked your spending ever, you're going to have to do a deep dive. You're going to have to go through your expenses. I recommend that people go at least 1 year back to kind of see trends in their spending. But if you are really scared, like you're like, I don't even think I can do a year, go back at least the last quarter. So check at least 3 months of your spending and just like put it all together and see, how much did you spend on your housing? That's your rent, your home insurance, your renter's insurance if you're renting in America. Things like your utility bills. If you have phone, if you have the internet, if you have water and gas, put all of those things into this one spreadsheet and let Excel do its magic and sum up those totals and see, how much did you really spend per month? Once you get to that place of, all right, I've seen my financial picture in this kind of expense tracking space, where do I want to make changes? Where can I make changes? What are my negotiables? What are my non-negotiables? Everyone has a set of expenses that no matter what financial situation they're in, these things have to get paid, or I have to do these things. And then there's some other things where it's like, okay, if I miss this month, I won't be too upset. We need to get clear on what those are, because those will drive the different types of financial decisions that we make each month.
So I want to ask my audience. One of the things I want to ask my audience, I'm just going to put this on the screen here. The audience, do you track your expenses? And share if you do. I mean, let's just be honest. No, we won't judge. I guess that might be a hard thing for people to say.
Judgment freezing, because like I said, like, I mean, I am a millennial, right? So I am kind of early in my career. I'm early in my kind of wealth building game. So for me, it's like, okay, I'm not too late, but I do know that I've spoken to a lot of people who are, in their 40s and 50s, and they feel like I just waited too long and I should have done this earlier. And I totally get that I understand. I feel what they're talking about. However, it's never too late to get started, because one of the things that you're going to be doing for yourself is, one, get yourself on track. But then if you have children, if you have nieces and nephews, it's going to show them that this is possible. And the sooner you learn it, the better it'll be for you. So yes, I've made the mistake of waiting till however old I am, but I am changing my situation so that your situation will be better. And I think this conversation around finances is so taboo. It's so quiet. People don't have these open conversations around it. So it does get difficult when you're in a family structure to talk about finances.
So I'm just looking at some of the comments on screen. I actually have to go to Facebook to look at them only because of how it's set up here. But someone is saying yes now. I know that there are people of all ages who are just coming into this idea of wealth building. I mean, so many of us have been in professions. I know that even in education, professions where we were taught to do a lot of things for free and give of our time and this kind of live paycheck to paycheck was kind of encouraged, right? I mean, you save, but you're giving away a lot, and I just see that I just see more people now thinking about wealth building at all these different ages, and it's never too late to start, right? Is it?
No, it's never too late. And I would say for those that do have like a giving portion in their expenses or their spending, you absolutely should have a giving kind of category, because I know for myself, when I want to share another personal story, when I was in my graduate program at Georgia State, so it was a 1-year program. It used to be a 2-year, but then they dropped it down to a 1 year. And so my first semester ended up being covered. My mom was able to help me with that. But then my second semester, I had no idea how I was going to pay for it. But I had zero idea. Like, no idea. So I was going to a local church in the area, and they had like this volunteer opportunities that were coming up. They were starting like their volunteer drive, basically. So I signed up for like a volunteer position. It was super early in the morning before dawn. I mean, 4 a.m. I had to be there. And so every Tuesday and Thursday, I would volunteer at this place. Again, I'm volunteering my time. They're not giving me any money for this. And I did that for a couple of weeks. And then I ended up working with someone to get a loan to pay for my second semester or mini master was called, at Georgia State. And then I had this same cycle my third semester where I didn't know where the money was going to come from, but I was still volunteering at that time. And the third semester was able to get paid for as well. And so one of the things that I do talk about in the podcast, when I do talk about mindset and I talk about like, giving to receive, even if you are living paycheck to paycheck, if you're just able to take care of your necessities, your essentials right now, continue to do that and continue to give where you can. You don't always have to give financially. You can give your time. And when the creator, God, whatever term you use for that higher power, when it looks down and it sees that you're doing the work to get to a wealthier place, mentally, physically, spiritually, etc., materially, it will manifest and it will become. And so I feel like a lot of us are looking to the future to kind of, I need the wealth now. And we're not looking at what we have today and managing that better.
Yeah. Look, let's move on in the time we have. Let's talk about now, how do we managing that better? How do we do that, right? And I want to talk more specifically about budgeting. I know that once tracking is a very powerful first step even to track. But I want to talk about managing and budgeting and what are the decisions that people have to make. But let's take just a quick station identification before we come back to the INIs, Dr. Lou and Terri K, the INIs from Bermuda, talking about financial literacy. This is Pod Before Dinner, Talking Math with Dr. Lou. And we're back. This is Dr. Lou talking math, this is Pod Before Dinner, Talking Math with Dr. Lou. It's been a long day. I have with me in the audience, Terri K, host of the podcast, The Sovereign Life, as at Terri Too Cool. You can see her username just here on the screen. Please follow her on Instagram. And Terri, I do want to talk about your podcast and how people can get in touch with you. You have some master classes that you've done in the past, right? Do you have any master classes coming up?
At the moment, I don't. I am working with the Bermuda National Library on something. I don't have a date just yet, but I am kind of taking a step back. I think I'm going to be taking a break. As you mentioned, you're doing a break for your shows. I'm definitely thinking about taking a break because I've got a lot going on. But when that does come back out, people can definitely look out for that.
I'd love to expose my audience to phenomenal people, phenomenal thought spaces, such as the ones in which you curate. So I'm so happy to have you here. Listen, let's jump back in to talk about budgeting. So when you talk about budgeting, you often mention tools. How do I budget? Like, where do I start? How do I budget? What should I be thinking about? Take us through that.
Sure. So there's two ways that you can do this, right? There's the old school way. So there's paper and pen or pencil. And then there's the new school way, technology. I think that there's actually a third bonus. You can do both. And people need to get clear on like which way will work best for them. Not everyone is techie and not everyone wants to spend the time of writing it down themselves. So the first, you want to determine which method of managing your money you're going to do, whether it's physical, old school, digital, tech, new school, or if you're going to do a combination of both. Once you've decided which way you're going to do it, you either, if you're doing old school for paper and pencil, you're going to write out your categories. And you kind of want to keep this general to start. And then if you do want to get more granular, if you want to go down even further and dig deeper into your expenses and your spending, then you can break it down. So you want to make sure you have things like your housing. You might put your utilities with your housing, or you might separate them. You also want to have bucket for your food, groceries, eating out, or you can put those separate or you can have them together. So you definitely want to make sure the categories that you have, they're descriptive enough, but they don't necessarily have to go into the weeds of everything. Once you have your buckets, you need to gather your documents. So these are things like your pay stub. These are things like if you have any other income streams, whether it's child support, alimony, or you have multiple businesses, you want to get all of that information together. And then you also want to have, if you have a retirement account, if you have investment accounts, and any other accounts that you may have that are income bearing accounts, you want to have that information on hand as well. When you're ready for all of these documents and you're ready to set up your budget, your top part of your budget should be your income. So that's all the money that's coming in, whether it's, like I said, your pay stub or any of those additional streams that we just talked about. And then after you kind of set up your income side of your budget, you get into your expenses. These are not the sexiest, but you need to do them. And so, like I said, try to keep your categories as general as possible in the beginning, because I found personally, when I tried to get too granular and write down all of the different expenses that I had, I got overwhelmed. And then I quit. I stopped. And so the general way, I've actually created a new simplified budget to kind of make it a little bit easy for those folks that are trying to get started with their budget for the first time and they have no idea how to do it. I do have a template for that. It's a Google Sheet. So it would be for Excel or Google for use. Another tools that you can use.
So where's that? Where can I find that tool? Where's that?
So it's actually going to be on the tslpodcast.com. And I can't remember the link that I set up for it. So I will, if people are following me on Instagram, I will post that shortly. I can't remember that. I have a nice, pretty link for it, but I don't remember what it is.
Okay.
And I'll definitely send it to Lou so that he can share it with you all in the Facebook group or on YouTube.
And you said that's tslpodcast.com, right?
Correct. Yep.
So that's, that's pretty interesting, right? So when I think about what people need to get into this mindset of building wealth, it sounds a lot like therapy to me. The first thing, getting over the idea of one, getting into the wealth consciousness that, look, this is important for me in my generation and even in the present. Two, now let me track where I am, like being realistic about where I am. Right? Am I broke? Am I poor? Like being very, very realistic and taking we talk about accountability, but taking account of what my income is, what my true income is, what my expenses, the tracking, right? And then the budgeting is kind of like the discipline, right? And then you've mentioned the tools. So you've created tools yourself, even if you couldn't find tools. I find my bank attaches. I find I have some really good apps out there that attach to my bank account that. Well, what are some apps that are out there to use? I can tell you one. I think you share one on one of your podcasts. But what are the apps that you like? One that I've found, and tell me if you like this one. It's Truebill.
Okay.
Truebill or True Bills. And I just started using it, and I realized that I was spending about $100 a month just on these apps that I had not unsubscribed to.
Yep, those are money leaks.
Yeah. And so, but what are some other apps and what are some other, I guess, secrets you found that help people in the budgeting process to not leak money?
So definitely some apps that I love. The first app that I used was mint.com. It's actually not an app, it's a website. But mint.com was like the first tool that I used that really got me into the mindset and the discipline around budgeting. It's really great for US-based accounts. I have not known it to work for other international bank accounts. So if you're in Bermuda or if you're outside of the US, it may not be a good tool for you as far as connecting to your bank account, because the really cool thing about it is once you connect it to your bank account, it would do things like set up your budget categories. It would tell you if you had set, I want to spend $500 on my groceries. It would tell you when you're getting close to that $500 limit. It would tell you when you went over. And so it would do all of that fancy stuff for you. So if you are in the US, I highly recommend mint.com. Bank of America actually has some really nice dashboards now in their website. Before, it was not the greatest. So they actually have upgraded.
I use that as well. Yeah.
They have definitely upgraded it.
Truebill, which connects to my Bank of America, is surprisingly really good. So not only do they track their subscriptions, they also they also track my Bank of America and can
Mhm.
track and can make a budget for me very easily
Mhm.
as well. Are there any other ones? There's another one you
Yes,
mentioned.
I do have 3 other ones actually that I'm actually
Okay,
testing out
go.
for people, definitely for people here
Uh-huh.
in Bermuda because we can't, use Mint.com. So MoneyWise is one that's actually one that is connected to Christianity. So if you are a Christian, that one would be a really good one because they do have other things in there besides just being able to track your budget. They have like biblical scriptures that kind of
Mhm.
align with wealth. Money Coach is the one that I'm really, really fancy. I love that one. I'm fancying that one the most.
Why is that?
I just like the user experience of it has been the easiest to kind of just start with. And the other one
Mhm.
that I have is Money Lover and Money Wise have just been a little bit difficult for me to kind of like understand like what's the flow, like how can I flow in this app as far as setting up my budget categories, tracking my
Mhm.
spending. So those two, I'm not saying that they're bad, they're just I'm trying to find the best way to use those apps so I can share with folks like, okay, this is how I found it works for me. And that's one thing that I have found for folks when it comes to finding budgeting apps, because there are a lot out there. It's what's the workflow? How can I get from, okay, I have my numbers, I know what I want to spend. How do I get that into the app? And then how do I go about tracking? And so those 3 apps, though, if you are looking for an app, this is the thing though, they have free versions, but they don't really give you much in the free version. So you will have to likely upgrade to their pro version
Mhm.
in order to actually
Yes.
track, which for me, as someone who has the good discipline, that's okay because I've been able to kind of get myself to a place where I can do this every week and it's not a problem for me. When you're
So
first
which app
starting
are you
out,
using? What are you using?
so I'm using all 3 to test them
Right.
out. My favorite one is Money Coach. However, for folks who are currently like, okay, I cannot afford to add a new subscription to my kind of budget, I would recommend to use the Google Sheet method. And so I will share that information with Lou so that you can download that spreadsheet, because I also have a video on how to set up your budget in that spreadsheet.
Okay. No, listen, I appreciate all of the advice. I know we've gone into the weeds a little bit, but we appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I think this has to be about very practical advice for community. And this is mathematics, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
about having conversations about mathematics that are real, that are in touch with community and where people can benefit at a very real, authentic level. You have been listening to Pod Before Dinner Talking Math with Dr. Lou. I'm here in studio with Terri K, aka Terri Too Cool, host of the podcast The Sovereign Life. Terri, we've really appreciated having you today. It's been such a pleasure. We're going to keep following you in your career, following your work in as a Black wealth champion.
Yes.
Please follow Terri 2K, Too Cool. You can please look at her podcast, tslpodcast.com. You can follow her on Instagram at what was it again? At Terri. Let me see. I think I took that.
At Terri Too Cool. That's
At
TERRI, the
Terri.
number 2 KOOL.
Yes, right. That's right. The
Yes,
INI,
I.
Terri K. Yes, I. Bless, bless, bless. So it's a pleasure having you. You have been listening to Pod Before Dinner Talking Math with Dr. Lou. Until next time, everyone, be safe. Thank you for such a great season. We'll take time off and see you again in season 3. Please do me a favor, spread the word, share this to your profile. Also, go to our YouTube page. You can go to podbeforedinner.com and find our YouTube page, and please subscribe. We need some subscribers, so let's put up our subscriber base, and you can see all of our videos as well. But thank you for coming. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.